Before we dive in, we want to hear from you. Do you believe migration is lifting Australia up or holding local workers back? And if you're a migrant yourself, have you ever felt cornered in job interviews, repeatedly overlooked despite your qualifications, or stuck in roles far below your skill level just because you're foreign? You're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation we all need to have. Are migrants really taking jobs from Australians? Or is that just a myth fueled by fear and politics? In today's video, we're diving deep into one of the most debated topics in Australia: migration and its impact on the job market. From white-collar professionals to blue-collar workers, we'll explore whether migration increases competition, affects wages, and changes the bargaining power of local workers. Stay tuned, because the truth might surprise you. Australia has long been a destination for migrants seeking better opportunities. With over 30% of the population born overseas, migration is not just a trend. It's a cornerstone of the nation's identity. Generations of newcomers have helped build this country's cities, farms, businesses, and institutions. But today, amid rising concerns about job security, wage stagnation, and the soaring cost of living, many Australians are questioning whether large-scale migration is still serving the national interest. Are we importing economic growth or importing inequality? Let's break it down with evidence, not emotion. First, let's talk about labor supply. Migration naturally increases the number of people available to work. That's a fact. But does that mean fewer jobs for Australians? Not necessarily. According to research from the OECD and Australia's Centre for Population, for every 1% increase in migrants joining the workforce, employment for Australian-born workers actually rises by 0.53%. That's right. Migration tends to expand the economy, not shrink it. Migrants don't just consume jobs, they create demand for goods, services, and infrastructure, which in turn generates new employment opportunities. Moreover, they often fill critical skill gaps in industries like healthcare, education, construction, and IT, sectors where local talent is either insufficient or unavailable. So instead of replacing Australians, migrants are often complementing them, allowing the economy to function more smoothly and efficiently. Now let's zoom in on white-collar jobs, the professional, managerial, and technical roles that power Australia's knowledge economy. Do migrants compete with Australians here? Yes, but it's not a zero-sum game. Skilled migrants are highly educated. In fact, over 70% of skilled migrants hold a diploma or higher qualification, compared to just 35% of the Australian-born population. They're also more likely to have postgraduate degrees and be employed full-time. But here's the twist. Many skilled migrants face significant barriers that limit their ability to compete directly with locals. Auscristis, non-recognition of overseas qualifications, lack of local experience, and subtle forms of recruitment bias often keep them out of roles that match their expertise. As a result, many end up underemployed, working in positions far below their skill level. Think engineers driving taxis, doctors working in retail, or accountants doing warehouse packing. So, while competition exists in theory, it's often muted in practice by systemic challenges that prevent migrants from fully participating in the white-collar job market. In contrast, blue-collar sectors, like hospitality, agriculture, cleaning, and manual labor, do see more direct competition. Migrants in these industries, particularly those on temporary visas, are often more willing to accept lower wages and less favorable conditions. This can put downward pressure on salaries and reduce the bargaining power of local workers, especially in regions where labor markets are tight or union representation is weak. This dynamic is especially pronounced in the gig economy and casualized work arrangements, where job security is low and protections are minimal. However, it's important to recognize that many of these roles are ones that Australians increasingly avoid, due to physically demanding conditions, remote locations, or irregular hours. Without migrant labor, many farms would struggle to harvest crops, restaurants would close during peak hours, and aged care facilities would face even more severe staffing shortages. So while there may be localized pressure on wages, the broader effect is that migrants keep essential services running. So, does migration reduce wages overall? The short answer: not significantly. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including those by the Australian National University and the Productivity Commission, consistently show that migration has little to no negative impact on average wages across the economy. In fact, skilled migration can lead to higher wages by boosting productivity, innovation, and business investment. However, the picture is more nuanced in low-skilled sectors. There, wage suppression can occur, not because of migration itself, but because of how the system is managed. When employers exploit temporary visa holders, bypass minimum wage laws, or discourage workers from joining unions, wages can stagnate. But the root cause here isn't migration. It's weak enforcement of labor standards and inadequate protections for vulnerable workers. This brings us to bargaining power, the ability of workers to negotiate fair pay and conditions. In industries with strong unions, collective agreements, and stable employment structures like education, nursing, or public transport, migration has minimal impact on bargaining power. Workers in these fields can advocate for themselves regardless of labor supply. But in sectors dominated by casual, temporary, or visa-dependent labor, the situation is different. Migrants on temporary visas may be unaware of their rights, fearful of employer retaliation, or hesitant to speak up due to concerns about their visa status. This creates a two-tier labor market, one where some workers enjoy security and representation, and another where others are vulnerable to exploitation. The solution isn't to reduce migration, it's to strengthen labor laws, improve access to legal support, and ensure all workers, regardless of origin, are treated fairly. Looking at the bigger picture, migration is not just about jobs. It's about economic dynamism, cultural enrichment, and long-term sustainability. Migrants start businesses at higher rates than native-born Australians. They pay taxes, contribute to superannuation, and help offset the challenges of an aging population. They bring global perspectives, new technologies, and entrepreneurial energy that enhance Australia's competitiveness on the world stage. They're not just workers. They're neighbors, taxpayers, innovators, and community builders. And while competition in certain segments of the labor market is real, it's manageable with the right policy settings. Faster skills recognition, anti-discrimination measures in hiring, and migration programs that align with genuine economic needs rather than short-term political optics. So why does the myth of migrants stealing jobs persist? Because it's politically convenient. During election cycles, migration becomes a lightning rod for broader anxieties about inequality, housing affordability, and wage stagnation. Politicians often use migration as a scapegoat to deflect attention from deeper structural issues, like underinvestment in training, declining union density, or corporate tax policies that favor capital over labor. But the data tells a different story. Economists across the political spectrum agree that well-managed migration is a net positive, economically, socially, and culturally. It's not a threat to Australian workers. It's a tool that, when used wisely, can lift everyone. So, are migrants taking Australian jobs? Not really. They're filling gaps that locals aren't filling. They're boosting productivity, starting businesses, and creating new opportunities. Yes, there's competition, especially in low-wage, casualized sectors. Yes, there are real challenges around wage suppression and worker vulnerability. But these problems stem not from migration itself, but from how we regulate our labor markets and support both local and migrant workers. With smarter policies, stronger enforcement, and a commitment to fairness, migration can be a force for shared prosperity. It's time to move beyond fear-driven narratives and focus on facts. Migration isn't the enemy of Australian workers. It's part of the solution to building a more resilient, inclusive, and dynamic economy.